Welcome to the Addiction Solution Podcast. I'm Michelle Dunbar. Enjoy listening and watching as addiction experts Mark Sheeran and I cover controversial as well as helpful topics on addiction, how to move past it, and other related subjects. As two of the co-founders of the Freedom Model, Mark and I will give you a completely new perspective on the topics that matter to you. We will take to task the Recovery Society's lies and misinformation and replace them with facts, research, and the methods to move on from addiction struggles without 12-step meetings, rehabs, and the shackles of endless recovery. Let's escape the treatment and recovery trap together and learn to be free. Welcome to the truth. Hey everyone, Michelle here. I'm so excited to let you know about Freedom Model International membership. Get support as you deprogram from the 12 steps and the shackles of addiction recovery. For a low monthly membership fee, you get the Freedom Model online program, which includes our books, our audiobooks, workbooks, and all the additional lessons. You also get the Freedom Model for the Family online program as well. You will get a live members-only 2-hour question and answer webinar with Mark and myself the last Wednesday of every month. And each week, we're going to add a new video lesson. We call this the What We Learned This Week series. Lastly, we also have the Freedom Model International monthly newsletter, where we're going to tackle the current events and the latest research for you. All this for just $39.95 per month. You can stay a member for as long as you need, and you can suspend or cancel your subscription whenever you're ready. Go to online.thefreedommodel.org to sign up today.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, we're back with the Addiction Solution Podcast.
So I've noticed on social media, I don't know if it's because it's springtime or what, but we've been getting a tremendous amount of comments and discussion about various unethical questions about treatment, about practices that are unethical, and ideas and questions about why treatment does certain things, why in that industry they do certain things. And I don't, have you noticed that there's been?
Yeah. And I had to actually kick somebody out of our group who was defending those practices.
Yeah, that's so crazy.
That somebody that joined the Freedom Model group. We don't tend to get the treatment and AA trolls like the Leaving AA groups do, because they're set up called Leaving AA. Our group is really for people that want to learn the Freedom Model, and that's why we called it that. But every once in a while you get these people that come in, and whether they come in initially because they're curious, or they come in because they want to try and save all you poor people who follow us.
Yeah, because we're dangerous.
Because we're dangerous. We're killing people, right? That's what these people believe. People defend this. And look, there's a long history now, probably, but long, not that long, relatively long to us, our lifetime, 50 plus years of treatment being inhumane.
Yeah.
Addiction treatment being inhumane and abusive. And so what happens today is a lot less than what was happening in the 60s and 70s.
I think the overtness, well, I don't know about that. Let's think about the patient brokering schemes.
Oh, right. That's very recent.
If you want to know about that, go to Google and just type in the Florida Shuffle and Rehab.
Yeah.
And you will find out why and how.
But that was different. Like, that was all about money. That was all about.
But isn't it always about money?
It is about money, but I think there was an idea in the 60s and 70s that I think there was an underlying, these people need to be controlled because they're sick and they're going to kill themselves.
I think that's true, but I think that like Synanon, you look back at those cults that were involved in the early therapeutic communities where people were dying left and right, where the government had to come in and and shut them down. All of that is about power, control, but ultimately it's always about money. In the end,
Yeah.
every cult even is. It's rare that it doesn't have a financial angle to it because they got to keep it running after all. And but it's either about really narcissistic power, totalitarianism, right?
Yes. But by the leaders, right? By
Yes,
the leaders of it. So when we say stuff like that, we're not talking about
floor staff.
the people that are there working
Mhm.
with the people that are struggling.
That's right.
Because most of those people are believe that they're doing good work.
They know, if you've worked in a rehab, and some of you probably
A lot
have.
of people have that follow us now.
Yeah. Um, I'm sure you know how difficult it is to be on the floor staff and be listening to the rhetoric and knowing, boy, there's something wrong with this and the way they treat the patients. We don't call them patients at our retreat. We call them
They're
guests.
guests.
Yeah, they're our guests. But we don't do treatment, right? So there's no power struggle when you're instructing somebody and giving them information, and then you allow them to do whatever they want to do.
Right.
That's the beauty of what we do. But in rehab, the power structure and the hierarchy of power is very well defined. And that is, you have the executive staff that runs the place, ultimately owns it, makes all the money. And then you have a certain level of management, and then you have floor staff. And the floor staff is there usually making very little money, working long hours, and dealing with a tremendous amount of disgruntled people, because here's a practice that we were talking about in our group just this past week. Why do they take your cell phone away, or a laptop or a tablet?
Yeah, you're not allowed to bring any of those things.
Why is that a common practice in rehabilitation? And people often want some deep meaning to that. But I can tell you exactly why they do that,
too.
as somebody who's consulted with rehabs and looked interior
And ran our retreats. We had larger retreats. We never did that,
right.
but I know exactly why it was done.
Yeah. So yeah, we've never taken people's communication with the outside world away. It doesn't make any sense to me. But they do it because you would call your home or your husband or wife or somebody on the outside, and you would leave.
You would tell them what's going on.
Yeah. You would say, these people are crazy, and they're telling me that, I'm a sick, broken person, and that there's, and also that they're saying I should separate myself from my family, especially if the family drinks at all or takes drugs at all, even recreationally or moderately. And they would divide and conquer. That's part of the whole treatment model, is isolating the person and shuffling them into a safe space or environment post-treatment.
Well, the goal of treatment, okay, and I actually just had this conversation with one of our guests here last night, because he's been to multiple very expensive treatment programs. And you're told right up front that the goal of treatment is to break you down,
to build you back up,
break down your ego, right? So the process of doing that is in many cases abusive. So if you have your cell phone, and let's say we know that this happened frequently in rehabs. I don't know if it happens now, but I know it happened 10 years ago. They would make you didn't make your bed that morning, and they make you wear a sign.
Yeah.
All day that I'm a big fat baby because I won't make my bed, or something.
Yeah.
Something that is supposed to humiliate you.
Yeah. My brother went through a couple of TCs back in the day, back in the late 70s, early 80s, and they were still practicing that kind of stuff. They've outlawed a lot of that kind of abuse in some states, but there are places that still practice that kind of humiliation. It's a little more subversive, it's a little less overt. But in those days they did. You wear a sign. In his case, he wasn't allowed to wear any expensive clothes. So he had to go to the Salvation Army, get bum's clothes, as they put it, bum's clothes, and become a bum for ego deflation. Now, what's so crazy about this is the ego deflation at depth argument came out of Bill Wilson and Dr. Silkworth's fantasy in 1935, that this is what alcohol,
this is what it requires.
Yeah. And what that is, that's a cult tactic. We're going to strip you of your identity so that you become an alcoholic, so that your identity then becomes, I am a member of AA, right? And you no longer are an individual. a person
Right.
that's capable of moving on as an autonomous thinking person, a critical thinking person. So a lot of these tactics are all about making you a homogenous sort of being that is subservient to rehab, three-quarter house, transitional living, and then whatever your post, care plan is.
I want you to think of the irony of this, that Bill Wilson came up with it, because he never did that. His ego is the reason that AA is what it is today.
Right. That's a classic cult leader.
Yeah, exactly. Like the rules didn't actually apply to him,
Right.
even though he was like, this is necessary for you to stop your addiction, right? It's necessary for you to stop thinking for yourself. It's necessary for you to stop thinking of the future, and so all of the things, it was interesting because our guest, who's only been here less than a week, said this is the most amazing thing, because the things that I was told that I shouldn't be thinking of and shouldn't be doing, you guys are the opposite. You're saying to me, no, you should be thinking of the things that make you happy and what makes life worth living,
and how to move forward with your life and expand your thinking and think critically and debate. And yeah.
It's the opposite.
Yeah.
It's like you can't, there's no way to solve a substance use problem without thinking critically.
Yeah.
It can't be done.
So here's another tenet of AA and treatment, and that is that self-knowledge availed us nothing. And self-knowledge is not the answer. Those are two quotes from Bill Wilson's books and from himself. And so self-knowledge is not the answer. Self-knowledge is the answer. It's literally the answer.
The only answer.
It's the answer to life. It's the answer to critically thinking through problems and coming up with solutions that can make sense for you as an individual. There is no other way.
No.
Unless you're part of a cult and you're giving that right, the right of your own free will, and you're handing it to another entity, another group of people, and saying, think for me. Yeah. Think for me. And most people, when they enter AA, they don't know that that's what they're doing.
No.
Until they're in for a little while. And most people within 30 days go, yeah, something's really, really.
Yeah, more than half don't go back.
Right.
They're done. Right after, by 30 days, they're done. And then by the end of the year, it's 95% are done.
Yeah. So they
don't do it.
So only 5 out of 100 people that attend AA will stay more than a year, which is why AA is so dependent on the treatment industry to constantly be feeding bodies into that, or else they can't get the dollar in the basket in mass, and they can't sell their books, and then they can't regurgitate that back into the treatment system. So it's this amazingly symbiotic, destructive relationship. It's called the revolving door policy of rehabs, and it just keeps regurgitating human beings like a factory. And AA needs that, and Bill Wilson set it up that way. He was remarkably good at setting up his cult in our culture. It's been mainstream now. It's part of what we do to people. And it's flat out wrong, though.
And so when you go into a treatment program, that's really what you're signing up for. You're signing up, when you go into an addiction treatment program, you're signing up for the ego deflation, the massive ego deflation, and however they have to do that with you. And if you're somebody like Mark and I, where that was not okay.
Yeah.
we were independent thinkers, right? We just I questioned everything, and I was argumentative, and I could be difficult. And I just, if things didn't make sense to me, I needed to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go back to the phone thing, because it's such a good example. I want to reiterate. So they take your cell phone away. They take your communication away.
Yes.
Nothing good can happen from that, because what happens is they've now isolated you completely from the outside world. And why would they need to do that? Well, the implication is that you're too weak to not call your drug dealer for drugs. You're too weak to
which somebody said, that guy that I removed from the group said that. He's like, you need to be, locked up and not have contact, or else you're going to do that,
So what that says, the implication there, which is another falsity, is that you have a weakness problem.
Right.
And that you can't stop yourself from calling up the drug dealer. Now, here's what's interesting. For 32 years, and not for the full 32 years, but since cell phones have existed for 25 of those 32 years, we didn't take cell phones away.
Nope. And
you know
what? Not only do we not take cell phones away, but treatment programs, by and large, like inpatient treatment programs, have completion rates less than 50%. Okay. Our completion rate was always between 75 and 85%.
Right. And here at this retreat, it's 90.
It's well over 9. It's like 98%.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's awesome.
So, when we were really working on it, we could consistently have 80 to 85% completion rate. Like, and those people that didn't complete the first time for whatever reason usually came back to complete. So when you look at it in the larger, it's about a 90 to 95% completion rate. And they had cell phones and they had access to the internet. Yeah. And we took them on outings. They got to go to the gym. They got to go, do their laundry at the laundromat. I mean,
run errands and go to the drugstore, go to Walmart. I don't follow them around.
Yep.
And did people occasionally use drugs? It was incredibly rare.
It was less than the people that didn't complete. Maybe it was 5%. Yeah. 5%. But the majority of those would come back and complete when they were ready.
Yeah. So it's interesting because when somebody comes to our retreat, I'm not going to sit there and go through their bags, and they always hand me the bags, right?
I know.
And I say, I'm not going to go through your bag, but what you can do is right now go in the bathroom and flush whatever you got. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Just, you can do the right thing. And you know what? When you do that, some people go, they look at you and they go, okay. They go in the bathroom and they take care of whatever they had to take care of. And, they flush it down the toilet or whatever. And we move on. It's just, let's have a fresh start. I assume that you want to be here. You're paying to be here. And it's a great relationship because it's based on trust, and it works out fine.
And yeah, we have a voluntary program, but that doesn't mean we don't have people that are here because they've been given an ultimatum.
Oh yeah,
we do. We, with the bigger retreats, we would have a lot of people there that were given an ultimatum, or that were there because they didn't want, they were alternative to going to jail. Mm-hmm. And so, because that's what the treatment program say. Well, most people are here, are forced to be here.
We had a lot of that.
We did have a lot of that, and we still, it's amazing what happens when you have expectations that people are going to act a certain way. They typically will live up to them. So whether that's positive or negative, you see that in behavioral health all the time. You see that with kids, whatever expectations you have are going to be manifested. Typically.
Yeah. And they'll reach the expectation. Mm-hmm. So if you build trust, you trust them, they trust you back. And then real good education and learning can happen because it's not fettered with all of this distrust and anxiety and misery. Going to rehab is miserable.
God, it is.
It's miserable. Now, so there's all kinds of other unethical things that treatment centers do. Not all of them do them, but a lot of times they will do a bait and switch. They'll say they're non-12-step. There's only one program that's non-12-step, and that's us. And I'll tell you why, because we don't equivocate. We don't play both sides of the fence. We never use the word disorder, disease, because you don't have either.
We don't tell people they need support of any kind in order not to drink or do drugs. It's a matter of making a decision and figuring out what you want to do. So yeah, we don't equivocate on these things. We don't play both sides. A lot of places now will tell people, oh yeah, we're non-12-step. And then they'll have one SMART meeting a week or something like that, where they're just kind of, but if there's no SMART meetings, then you still got to go to 12-step meetings.
Right. And then they have an aftercare plan where they hook you up with meetings and
a
they
sponsor.
And a sponsor. And, so what's cooked into that is that you're out of control, which is a lie, which is disease in different clothing. Because if you actually are compelled to use a substance past your free will and you have no control, well, guess what? That's a disease, folks. I mean, that's what a disease is. That's what, like cancer, you have no control over what's happening in your body, So, so what they do is they play this weird semantics game, but it's not semantics. It's real. They are playing both sides of the fence. Now I'll tell you why they do that. It's because they want the insurance dollars, because they still have to get a diagnostic code for disease and disorder in order to get paid. And then what they'll do in a lot of these cases is they'll also bill you privately for the non-12 step portion. And so
Hmm.
all of a sudden now they're getting double paid. Also, another unethical thing they do is they double your bill when you get there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Yeah,
common practice.
you're told up front what, oh, it's going to cost you this much, but it ends up, costing you 20% more, 50% more. I mean, all of a sudden, or they rope you into staying. There's a lot of people will come here and they'll be like, it's just 4 weeks. It's just 4 weeks. Come to the retreat. And I'll be like, yeah, 4 weeks. You're going to be finished in 4 weeks. And they'll be like, oh, but you're going to tell me I need to stay longer once I'm there. And I'm like, no.
Yeah. That's somebody that's been to a bunch of rehabs.
Yep.
I remember here's another thing that rehabs do. Way back in probably 1994, 93 or 94, I trained some state investigators, and I trained them on how to be a drunk, right? Because these people weren't drinkers, and they were straight up guys and women, and they had to go into a rehab and go to outpatient, and some of them went inpatient. And then what they did is they would skip classes. I call them classes. They would skip sessions and counseling and see if Medicaid continued to get billed. And actually, it ended up shutting down 5 rehabs here in the local area because it was all Medicaid fraud. So there's a huge amount of Medicaid fraud that happens where you get people in this tied up with probation or whatever, and they're going to an outpatient clinic. They don't go to their sessions, but they have a doctor signing off as if they did. And they just forge signatures, and they're getting just paid Medicaid dollars constantly. So that was something that I was involved with. That was fun. That was kind of cool, training all those people. But
I'm sure that still goes on today.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They do sort of a sting operation like that, and it cleans that area up for a number of years, and then slowly the easy money.
Yeah, third party payers.
Yeah, it's just easy money, and that's one thing we've avoided for 32 years. We don't take any third party reimbursement. We don't do any of that stuff because it just makes it, and we don't even take, a lot of donations at this point, because all our research stays completely
Independent.
unbiased.
Yeah, independent. We had opportunities to get different grants and things like
Yeah.
that. But inevitably, there is a very strong push to keep addiction treatment exactly as it is, because it is, a $40+ billion business in this country. And there is so much. I mean, there's government agencies wrapped up in it. Many government agencies wrapped up in it. There is so much money to be made, that it attracts the worst of the worst.
Yeah. Yeah. And so years ago, here's something that happened when the patient brokering thing took off. And what that is you had these call centers that would advertise on the internet as a treatment center, and they really weren't a treatment center. What they were just a call center, and they had a whole bunch of rehabs that were bidding for the call center calls, and whoever was the highest bidder is who would get the customer. Now the customer didn't know that. They thought they were contacting,
somebody that was going to help them.
Yeah, or the Cleveland Rehab or
Right.
something, right? And actually, it was just a call center. And then they'd say, well, Cleveland probably isn't the place you need to be. You probably need to be in Rhode Island at this facility based on your symptoms and based on now really what it was the place in Rhode Island was paying that call center the most money. So they were brokering the patient. And so that now in a lot of cases, there weren't even rehabs. What they were sober living houses where they were giving these kids, in a lot of cases, drugs, keeping them high, getting them dirty urines, and then billing the insurance company for more tests, keeping them longer with the probation departments because they would test dirty and then they would extend their stay. And it was all an insurance fraud scheme. And in some cases, they had prostitution rings and prostituting these young people. And that was heavy in Florida and California. Huge. It's huge business. And it was tragic, sad, and kids were dying left and right of overdoses in these places. So you can look it up. It's all over the web. So I became aware of that, if you remember, when I had parents calling me because I have a good reputation on the web, right? As a person that's been involved for years and years and years, a lot of articles and stuff. And parents would call and say, my son is down at this rehab. And I would go searching for the rehab, and I'd say, okay, I see. And they won't let me talk to my son. I said, how old is your son? Well, he's 17. I said, he's a minor? Yeah. And I haven't talked to him in 4 months. I said, 4 months? Yeah, they won't let me talk. They said it's part of his recovery. And I said, wait a minute, you need to get the police involved. And so we would call the police together, and they would send a police officer down. And in some cases, these places were locked up. They had walls. They had, they sort of had these fences around the places. And so the police had to actually get a search warrant and get the kid out. I mean, it was tragic stuff.
In some cases, they couldn't find where the person was. I remember one family we worked with where they thought their loved one was in one state and they were actually in another state.
Oh yeah, that was Florida to Texas.
Yeah, and they couldn't find where this person was.
And they said, you can have your son or daughter back if you do the family program in the place in Florida.
Yes,
do you remember that?
Yes.
And the parents were like, they smelled the fish, but they were so desperate. They said, where's my son or daughter? And it ended up that they admitted, well, we transferred him to Texas to a more secure place, to a place that's more intense for his care. But really, you're the problem. As the parents, they said, you're the problem. So we need to have you pay this amount of money, come through our family program, and you need to pay up front. And it was all a scam. And their kid was on drugs down in this other facility in Texas, which we got the police involved in. It was crazy.
It was totally insane. I mean, and this stuff, it just kept happening at more and more frequently. And I Google was kind of complicit in it, right? So everything changed, and all of a sudden there was a period of time, a couple of years, where you couldn't advertise on Google as a rehab because it was all so crazy.
Yeah, because they kind of got caught. All the bid per click advertising.
They were making so much money.
They were making, I forget what the number was. It was hundreds of millions a month, and they realized, oh my God, we're part of this patient brokering thing. I don't think Google knew it.
No.
But I think that what happened was they said, we got to get out. And so they shut all the marketing off on Google for, I don't know.
It was like 18 months.
Was it that long?
I think it was like 18 months. It was a long time.
Yeah, I guess it was.
It was a long time. Now they've got a different system, but we're starting to get contacted now. We were just contacted the other day by one of these places that basically you buy leads.
Yeah.
So it's happening again. It's going to happen again. So
I'm not sure it ever stopped.
No, probably not.
I think that the active criminals that were running the prostitution rings, but because that was so obvious.
Yeah. But it's still, you just got to be wary. Look, if something doesn't, if something feels like you're looking for help, and any place that is pushy.
Yeah, that's it. Right.
Okay.
There.
That is like the bad treatment oftentimes starts on the first phone call.
Yeah.
By them making you feel panicked. Like,
that's
especially
right.
if a loved one calls and says, oh, my son has been using heroin. He's overdosed twice. And so you're already feeling pretty panicked, right?
Yeah. You freaked right out.
And then this person says, oh my God, you got to get him here yesterday.
Yeah.
Like he's going to be dead in 2 days. And they, instead of calming you and helping you to see, okay, this is something we can help you
let's
with.
Make some rational decisions.
Yeah.
Right?
No, they up the panic because they know
that you'll pay
whatever it takes to save your loved one.
That's right. So these are fairly common things. Now, I don't want to paint a picture that,
that everyone is terrible and shiesty.
Yeah, they're not. They're in a system that is incorrect in most of what it teaches. So you're already behind the 8 ball when you're going to a rehab. You're already lowering your chance of moving past the problem. So that's where rehab starts. It starts from a negative position. So just be aware of that. If you're questioning what we're saying, what I would do is just get our book, The Freedom Model. You can get it for free at thefreedommodel.org and use coupon code FREEDOM100 at checkout. That's freedom and then the digits 100. And you can get our book and you can see what we're talking about, not in regards to treatment, but more in regards to how to move past the problem without all this stuff, because your loved one, or you can move past this without any of the encumbrances of this crap.
Yeah, the data is absolutely clear. And it's been consistent ever since it's been measured for 50 years. And that is the majority of people stop this problem on their own with no treatment whatsoever.
That's right.
And so it really does mean that anybody can. And the thing about treatment, like we said earlier, and I want to qualify, is that most of the people that work in treatment um, have good intentions, but a lot of people at this, it's you quickly become jaded, I think is the word I'm looking for, because once you
Yeah.
see the recidivism rate and you see people coming in and out and in and out and going through the revolving door, you really do get to a point where you're like, it doesn't matter really what I say or do. None of these people are going to get it anyways.
Yeah, and then you have those floor staff, they're just in it for a paycheck and they just don't care anymore. And there
Yeah.
are facilities that have that as the culture of the facility itself, and those are very, very problematic places. They're filled with chaos.
Chaos. And a lot of places have a practice of hiring people in recovery. And what you see, what based on our research, is people that consider themselves to be in recovery that work in the industry have very high rates of going back to heavy substance use.
Yeah.
Because there's this idea that I can remember thinking this way when we were first in AA, thinking, I really like helping people. It would be nice if I could make a living doing it. And then I would stay sober, right? Because there's this idea that if you do that, so we'd get people that would come to the retreat and they'd be like, "Oh, I want to do this for a living," and I'm like, "No, you don't." No,
Well,
you.
it's such a strange thing too, because it's really about keeping tied to your drug use.
Yes.
Not making the changes you need to make in your
Not
life.
growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. Not moving past the problem adequately and just moving on with your life. So people will stay tied to the industry as a way to avoid changing.
Yes.
Frankly.
Yes.
But also avoiding getting high by distracting themselves with
this idea that you have to help somebody.
Yeah.
And it turns out you don't have to do that at all. As a matter of fact, people that don't do that move on with their lives, and we saw that very clearly.
Yeah.
The people that would just come to the program, leave and move on with their lives did great.
Yeah, they did.
But by long ways they did great. And the people that stayed tied to it, it became their prison.
Yep.
Because
self-created prison.
Yeah, you think, oh, I need to do this in order to stay sober myself. And no, you don't.
That's right.
Not at all. So look, it's the reason that treatment programs treat people badly is because it is part of their treatment model.
Yeah. It's a way of keeping you immersed in the model forever.
Yep.
And it's about funding. In the end, that's really what it's about. It's about money. And when you boil it all down, if there wasn't a lot of money to be made, none of this would have lasted the last 80 years.
That's for sure.
It wouldn't have.
That's for sure.
So avoid the abuse. If you're talking to a program, what Michelle said, and they're pushy, they're heightening the panic. They're saying you have to do this, this, or this when they use those terms. And you feel something in your gut, more fear.
That's the wrong place.
That's the litmus test for avoiding that.
Yep, absolutely. So if you want to talk to someone here, you can always call us at 888-424-2626. We always have hopeful news for you when we're talking to you. We will help you find a solution. Don't forget to sign up for, if you feel like you want or need it, you want low-cost access to our online program, you can go to the Freedom Model International membership, and you can get there at online.thefreedommodel.org. It has some wonderful benefits for being a member, and it's $39.95 a month.
And just so you know, when she says benefits, she's understating the fact that you get our entire Freedom Model online program, which teaches the entire Freedom Model and video tutorials with me and Michelle. You get the Freedom Model online program, which also is me and Michelle doing video tutorials, teaching you that, how the family can help. And you get a newsletter, you get live 2-hour question and answer session every month. You get 4 new lessons a month from our instructors. And
I want to tell you that live 2-hour question and answer is a class with us. Okay. You will be doing a class with us. It's not like our Facebook lives where we have a bunch of questions and we do it and there's not really much interaction. This is interactive where, it will be whoever logs in during that time period. It's last Wednesday of the month from 3 to 5 Eastern time. We're going to wait for you to ask. I mean, we may have a couple things we want to talk about. We'll do a quick lesson depending on, just to get things rolling. But if we don't get questions, we'll just sit there quiet with you.
Yeah. We'll hang out for 2 hours.
I'll hang out for 2 hours. We have a lot of fun with each other, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So thanks, everybody. And we hope you have a good week.
Take care, everybody.